Hey, how's it going, church? Good to see you. This is Pastor Brandon here, bringing your daily devotional, mixing up the order a little bit this week, but I think many of us have probably seen in the past week or two here that we did lose Ravi Zacharias, who passed away from complications with cancer. And maybe some of you aren't familiar with that name, and if you're not, I really encourage you to go to the internet and look up his ministry, look up his videos. But I'm sure most of us are probably familiar with him, if not really intimately connected to his ministry in some way. And of course, he's an amazing apologist and theologian. The way that he brings clarity to the gospel for someone who is seeking, for someone who has intellectual struggles with the Christian faith, all those things. He's been such a wonderful voice into those issues for the Christian community all around the world. So he leaves a big hole for us, but I can only imagine the way heaven is celebrating his homecoming right now. But so continuing on our series with how to deal with doubt this week, I wanted to pick up on some of the points that Ravi gives in some of his videos, and also as he interacts with audience members through Q&A and things like that. So the first thing I want to explore is this question of how do we believe what we believe? How can we test what we believe or want to believe in ways that actually bring results, in ways that actually are sound? And so three kind of main points that I want to briefly talk about here are this: rational tests, empirical tests, and existential tests. So what do those mean? Well, a rational test basically means, can the information or claim that you're questioning or wrestling through, can it be tested? Does it have a foundation in rational or realistic senses? Okay, almost like a mathematical approach to be able to rationally think through this claim or this information or this belief. An empirical test: does it make sense with the world around you? It's kind of more of a practical test as opposed to a mathematical or rational test. And so does what you believe or what you want to believe, does it practically make sense with your existence and the world that's around you? All right, can you draw parallels to this belief or to this claim with other things going on in the world? And then third, that existential test: is it undeniable in your own story, in your own experience? Do you sense or feel without a doubt that it's true, or that you want it to be true? And so, of course, all of these tests alone can't fully bring clarity to truth, right? You can't just rationalize everything that we see in the world, because there are some things that just don't have a rational explanation. And of course, we all know in this day and age that we can't just believe something is true because we feel it, right? That often leads us astray. And so all these tests for truth work together to help us arrive at a belief system, or being able to identify what is true. And so as you wrestle through any kind of question or a doubt, I think it's important to remember that all of these things work together. And also the fact that there'll be times when one area may have to carry you through a crisis, or a really difficult time in some way. One might have to kind of take the lead in your own experience to help you process and figure out what's going on in your life. A couple of good examples are someone who has wrestled through depression, who has suffered in that way. And oftentimes the existential test, does what I feel kind of point me to truth? That might be out the window for a while, because how we feel is so damaged. And so our rational sense might have to carry us through that we know with our heads that something is true. We've tested it in the past, and we're going to cling to that test. We're going to cling to that belief, that remembrance of what has been true in our lives and true in the world around us, even though our hearts have to catch up. And similarly, kind of on the flip side of that, if you've ever dealt with an intellectual crisis, where you're really struggling with some of the intellectual claims of God or of Scripture, and you might have to lean into your personal experience. You might have to lean into how you've seen God be faithful in your own life or in the lives of the people around you, and that observance of what goes on around you, even if your head has to catch up with some of these questions. And I think also the other main point that I want to make in this devotional, and this is something that Ravi says really well in one of his talks, is to recognize the difference between a question and a doubt. Something that he says is that a question has an underlying belief that God has an answer. And even if you're wrestling to find it, that you can also trust that he is true and faithful even if that answer doesn't come. And so that's kind of a question, that there's that underlying belief that God is true, and you can cling to that even as you wrestle. Whereas a doubt, however, kind of makes you question whether God actually does have an answer. Makes you question whether God even is out there at all. That's kind of more the nature of a true doubt. And so for all my believing friends who are watching this, I don't want you to worry or beat yourself up if you are having questions. Questions are good. They're part of the faith growth process. They're part of our journey of faith in life, that we have questions, that as we are introduced to new ideas in Scripture, to new ideas about God, to new doctrines and areas of theology that we had never explored before, it's going to keep bringing up major questions. And that's good. That's necessary. It's how we grow. It's how we mature. It's how we learn. And if you look at all the men and women throughout Scripture, it's filled with questions, with serious, heavy questions about the character of God, about the plans of God. From the Old Testament all the way through the New Testament, we see that. And so we should never run out of questions, as long as we keep that underlying faith, right? That faith that he does have answers for us, whether or not we even will find them in this life. And then for any of my unbelieving friends who might be watching this, I want you to bring your doubts to God. And that sounds oversimplified, doesn't it? But I want you to seek mentorship from a strong believer who can walk with you through those doubts, through those questions. Seek out resources like from Ravi Zacharias or Tim Keller. Those are two incredible apologists for the Christian faith right now, and all the material that you can find online, whether they're books or their video series. Tim Keller has an incredible series, and I don't have the name of it right now, but I'll find it and I'll put it in the description under the video here. But a really good short 6-week series where he invites people from other backgrounds, whether faith-based or not, to interact with him in a discussion around chairs in a room, just to ask questions. And it's a really wonderful way. If you're one of those people, it's like, you know what? I am not on board with this Christian faith yet. I'm not on board with the Bible or the God of the Bible for reasons X, Y, Z. To seek out people who address those questions. And then I also want to encourage you to read the book of John. The Gospel of John is a really wonderful place to start, where you can really get at the heart of Jesus, the claims of his deity. And you can see the way John, even as a first century church apologist in some ways, brings together a lot of information of Jesus' story and kind of continues to point toward the mission of Jesus and also his deity, his character, and his personhood as well. And then at the end of the day, just remember that it's okay to question. I know I've already said that, but it's okay to have doubts and to seek answers. But just also remember the magnitude of what we don't know versus what we do know. And so I think that should always lead us to question and to doubt with a significant sense of humility. Well, that's all for today. I hope you're having a wonderful day, a wonderful week. We miss you here at the church, and we're looking forward to bringing people back whenever that happens and whatever that's going to look like. We're going to continue to trust the Lord with that process. All right, we'll talk to you soon.